So after a 2-week criminal trial in a very high-profile bank robbery case, the judge turns to the jury foreman and asks, "Has the jury reached a verdict in this case?" And the foreman responded, "Yes, Your Honor, we have. Would you please pass it to me?" So the judge declared as he motioned for the bailiff to retrieve the verdict slip from the foreman and deliver it to him. And after the judge reads the verdict himself, he delivers the verdict slip back to his bailiff to be returned to the foreman and instructs the foreman, "Please read your verdict to the court." The foreman stated, "We find the defendant not guilty of all 4 counts of bank robbery." And the family and friends of the defendant jump for joy at the verdict and hug each other as they shout expressions of gratitude. And the man's attorney turns to his client and asks, "So what do you think about that?" And the defendant, with a bewildered look on his face, turns to his attorney and asks, "Well, does that mean I can keep the money or do I have to give it back?" I told you some of them are, not that exciting. All right. So we're continuing on this prosperity theme. And I'm very excited because last week I got to talk about the big frog. And how many of you have taken a 4T prosperity class? Okay, if you know what the big frog is tithing. Ooh. And so it was very fun because as I stood at the back door, I had some people talk to me about, the minister talked about tithing. And how sometimes it can feel strange in a community because, churches kind of get a rap about, oh my gosh, the minister's going to talk about money and I'm going to sit toward the back and run out to the parking lot. But this is one minister that loves to talk about tithing, and I've mentioned it, but really talking about it just overtly as the topic was something that I was really excited to do last week because I shared with you my story about how, and I mean this, my life changed. My life was transformed by tithing because of the faith that it took for me to step out in the midst of being unemployed and tithe off my unemployment check. So we covered, where the whole idea of tithing 10%, and I think it's 10%. Well, the Bible says that Abraham's teacher, Melchizedek, Abraham wanted to give him a tithe, and it was 10%. So that's where it comes from. I personally think it's 10% because it's that ouchie amount. It's that, I can give maybe 3% or 5%, but 10%? Of everything that comes in. So if Aunt Bertha gives you $20 for your birthday, you tithe 10%, you tithe $2. And I recommended that, people go, well, do you tithe on the gross or the net? Go for the gross. Or, some people pay their expenses. It's fine. Whatever speaks to your heart to give from where you are spiritually fed. And I wanted to just end the conversation about tithing, just in terms of this prosperity series, with a promise that is biblical, that talks about the promise of tithing. And it's from Malachi 3:10. And it says, "Bring the full tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house, and thus put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts. See if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you an overflowing blessing." So let's metaphysically interpret that a little bit. There's not a God outside of us that's going to go, "Oh, open the window, here you get blessed." No, what that means is the windows of infinite possibility, the field of infinite possibility are always there. And see, as we tithe, we just open up the window because we say, yes, I trust that and I know that, and I am removing any fear. I'm removing any fear because there was an exercise I was doing with myself. Okay, you probably don't want to be in my meditation time because I do some weird things, but do this. Put your hands out. If you're able, put your hands out, both hands out, and clench your fists really tight, like really, 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 really tight, and how uncomfortable it is. And now release it. Do it again. Tight. Okay, that's our consciousness. Because what we do is we hold on, because we hold on to our money. We hold on to things. And when we can just let it go, how we feel that, it's almost like a relief, because we're letting go of our fear and we're letting go of our constriction. And so what I want to talk to you about that's about that is opening to the flow. And it has to do with forgiveness. So we're talking about what is between us and living our prosperity. And again, we've talked about what does prosperity mean to each of us. I think if we asked each one of us, we'd have a different idea of what prosperity means. And so one of the roadblocks that I have found on my journey, and if I look at teachers that teach prosperity, one of the big things that they teach is that we need to forgive people. We need to forgive those that we feel have hurt us, and we need to forgive ourselves. Because unforgiveness is a huge obstacle to experiencing prosperity. And why is that? It's because unforgiveness is usually accompanied with guilt and shame and blame and resentment and anger and rage. And we spend so much of our energy on that and not on that. And so unforgiveness creates a dis-ease in our being. Because the thing is, folks, the reality of the infinite flow, it's always present. It's just, are we allowing it to express in our life? Are we allowing it? And when we hold on to unforgiveness, when we hold on to that anger, when we hold on to how someone has shown up in our life that is less than our expectations of them, when we hold on to that, to being victimized, it constricts our allowing of the flow. It just does. And so I did some research on some prosperity teachers that have gone through some things in their life. Louise Hay just recently died. And Louise Hay, if you read her story, Louise Hay was abused, she was poor, and she was raped. And she developed cervical cancer. And much of her story and her teachings is all about her overcoming through her willingness, first of all, to do her inner work, to heal the unworthiness, of what happened to her, what she made up about herself because of what happened to her. And her journey of forgiving those people who had hurt her. Edwene Gaines is a Unity minister that has taught prosperity for years. And she's hilarious if you've ever been around Edwene. And she tells the story of how she was raped, and she used to tell the story constantly. And she had a spiritual teacher, and finally her spiritual teacher said, you got to get off this victim thing. It's really boring and a drag. Now, this was the kind of teacher that Edwene called into her life. She needed somebody that was going to give her a nice swift kick, And she said, it really woke me up, because what she didn't say, you poor thing. And so what I want to say to you is, please don't hear in any way, shape, or form that I know that there are those of you that are sitting in this audience right now that have gone through things that I can only imagine. But the thing is, at some point on our spiritual journey, folks, if we are going to live the life that we are here to live, we have to somehow do our healing work around that and come to some kind of forgiveness so that we're no longer walking around like a victim. And if you want to dive into some work, we have Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. She has a beautiful approach to healing your life. Because the thing is, what we start doing is we start to not love ourselves because we blame ourselves for what happened to us. And I think I've shared my story with you about my father. And, it kind of, when I was thinking about it, I thought, wow, it pales to what Edwene and Louise went through. But it still was my story. We all have our own stories. And our stories mean a lot to us. And my father left, and he was very abusive. He was an alcoholic, and we were beaten, and it was a lot of abuse in our family before he left. And in my mid-30s, I probably had seen him maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole life after that. And so I decided to do some healing work because I was the silent victim. Everything is all right. I'm fine. And my friends are going, really? And so I finally did some healing work, and I finally, got underneath, what this all had meant to me as a 3-year-old. When we're young and things happen to us, we make up a lot of stuff about ourselves because that's our world. Our parents, aren't to blame, right? We are. Who else would we blame but ourselves? And for years, I was unconscious about all the beliefs that I made up about Sheryl. It was my fault. I was to blame. I deserved it. I was unworthy. I was undeserving. Yeah, pretty heavy stuff for a 3-year-old. But the thing is, the awareness that I had when I was in my mid-30s was that I was still living out of those beliefs. And I was wondering why my life wasn't flowing the way I wanted it to flow. I had financial debt. My relationships were suffering. I couldn't find a job that really spoke to my soul. And so I did my healing work with that. And I've shared with you, I was able to go to my father because he was still living at the time, and we had 6 years together. But I share this story with you because I finally had to let go of my unforgiveness of my father. And what I found out underneath that silent in denial approach to what had happened to me is that I had a lot of anger. Yeah, I can imagine I had a lot of anger and a lot of hurt. And so I share this with you because I know we all have had people that have not met our expectations, people that have hurt us, job situations that have hurt us, you name it. And I am in no way, shape, or form making light of that, folks. I am not. I honor your journey. We've all had journeys. But what every prosperity teacher I have ever read in the spiritual domain has said is that those that have hurt us the most are the ones that teach us who we are. And so Edwene talks about what if we could reframe the story? What if we could reframe the story? Because her spiritual teacher said, Edwene, you are a woman of power. And you have a reach where you can touch people's hearts and you can support people on their journey through what you have gone through. And I want to share that because of what I've gone through, I've been able to sit across from someone and have a more understanding and compassionate heart. And it doesn't mean that we have to experience everything that someone else has experienced in order to minister to them, in order to, support them in letting go. But what I am saying is that what if we could reframe the story that has hurt us, that we've been living out of for so long, to allow it to support us to know more fully the truth of what we are. I know that those bumps that I have had on my journey have done nothing but really, truly expand my heart and teach me more fully what I am. It's interesting how our contrasting experiences can do that, isn't it? So, financial debt. If I had financial debt, and what I realized is that I was holding unforgiveness that was keeping that debt in place. And you go, well, how does that relate? Well, unforgiveness is about the past. Debt is about the past. And so when we're afraid, we hold on. And there is just something, folks, so freeing about letting go of feeling victimized in our life, and instead just, claiming the truth that we're loved. And I know it's easier said than done, and really, truly, forgiveness is a process. And, it's that things still keep coming around. We evolve and we move up the spiral of evolution, and we keep growing on our spiritual journey. And I think, I can check the box on that one. I'm not going to get triggered by that again. Oh, boy, here it is. But I'm in a different place. you notice as you keep doing your work, as you keep doing and loving yourself, and keep claiming the truth of what you are as a beautiful, worthy, whole, infinite, magnificent being, as you keep wearing that and try that on, when you come back around to that old stuff, it just doesn't have as much sting. I promise you it won't. So, I just invite you this week to sit with what we covered in meditation. Who have I put outside of my heart today? Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, every single night before he went to bed, would review his whole day. He would go into his, quiet time, and he'd review his whole day. And he would look to see where he was holding unforgiveness. And sometimes it would take him a couple minutes to release it and let it go. Sometimes it would take him hours. He was in his process. He was constantly looking at where he had put someone outside of his heart. So I just want to invite you, as part of this whole prosperity conversation, is to this week, I just invite you to look for yourself. Where have you put someone outside your heart? And that includes our world leaders. That includes everything. Yes, it does. Because although we think, people that aren't really in our immediate sphere of influence don't really impact us, oh yes, they do. Because folks, we forget, we're one. We are one. And so when you look at that, when you can be honest with yourself and you see someone that you have outside your heart, first of all, please be gentle with yourself. Because see, the thing is, when we forgive the other, what we also get to forgive is what we've made up about ourselves. That has been some of my most intense work. Not so much forgiving the person that hurt me, but forgiving Sheryl for living out of a lie for a long time. Yeah. So please, in this process of forgiveness, please be gentle with yourself. Please, please, please. And to remember that forgiveness is a process. And to do your journaling about it. Why has this triggered me so much? What have I made up about this? What's the underlying belief that I need to explore? Because the truth of me is, I am lovable, valuable, and capable. I am worthy. I am deserving. I am magnificent. That's what I want to hear you guys say. Right? Okay. It's feeling really heavy in here. Let's take a deep breath. Okay, so what I'd like for you to do to end this, I'd like for you to say, I am loving, valuable, and capable. I am loving, valuable, I am worthy and deserving. I am magnificent. I claim my prosperity. Because I deserve it. I want that with a little more attitude. Because I deserve it. All right. Yeah. Okay. I just felt like, folks, we had to have this conversation. And we have to. We can, right? We're up for it. Are we up for it? We're up for it. All right. Okay. All right. Let's affirm. Let's affirm together. As I release and let go, my life flows truly. And so it is. Bless you.